Hello everyone and welcome to Go Learning. Today we will see a history topic, Egyptian civilization. Ancient Egypt in North Africa was one of the most powerful and influential civilizations in the region for over 3000 years, from around 3100 BC to 30 BC. It left behind numerous monuments, documents, and works of art that continue to be studied by scholars today. However, this civilization existed long before this period and it has survived and flourished since. While the civilization's rulers, language, writing, climate, religion, and borders have changed into many times over the millennia, Egypt still exists as a modern-day country. Apart from its own rulers, the country was also occupied by other powers in the ancient times. The Persians, Nubians, Greeks, and Romans all conquered Egypt at different points. When you hear the name Egypt civilization, you are automatically bound to remember the name the River Nile. It is so very much connected to the civilization. Why is this river so important to the ancient Egypts? Let us see. Egypt could not have existed without the River Nile. Since rainfall is almost non-existent in Egypt, the floods provided the only source of moisture to sustain crops. Every year, heavy summer rain in the Ethiopian highlands sent a torrent of water that overflowed the banks of the Nile. When the floods went down, it left thick, rich mud, that's the black silt, which was excellent soil to plant seeds in after it had been plowed. The ancient Egyptians could also grow crops only in the mud left behind when the Nile flooded. So they all had fields all along the River Nile. Most villagers were farmers. Farmers lived in towns too, along with craft workers, traders, and other workers and their families. Even the pharaoh got the rich peasants to do the farm work on the rich lands. Egyptians grew crops such as wheat, barley, vegetables, figs, melons, pomegranates, and vines. They also grew flax, which was made into linen. Ancient Egyptians had simple farming tools such as winnowing scoops, hoes, rakes, flint-bladed sickles, and plows. Another piece of equipment used by farmers was the shudder. It was basically to lift the water from the canal that they used this instrument. Peasants also hunted for antelope in the desert beyond the hills, and fishing was done in the River Nile. So we can say that the River Nile was the lifeline for the Egyptian civilization. What else did this river provide the ancient Egypt? Reeds, called papyrus, grew alongside the Nile. They made paper and boats from the reeds. This river also gave the people food. They used spears and nets to catch fish. They would also use the nets to catch birds that flew close to the surface of water. Another way that the River Nile helped the ancient Egyptians was in trade. The Nile was the quickest and easiest way to travel from place to place. Let us see about the Egyptian timeline and how was it when it started. The people in ancient Egypt divided it into two areas. The Red Land was the deserts protecting Egypt on two sides. The deserts separated ancient Egypt from neighboring countries and the invading armies. The Black Land was the fertile land near the river where the ancient Egyptians grew their crops. Two separate kingdoms, ruled by different kings, developed along this river. The kingdom in the Upper Egypt was known as the White Crown, and the kingdom in the Lower Egypt was called the Red Crown. In about 3200 BC, the pharaoh of the north conquered the south and Egypt became united. The pharaoh's name was King Narmer or Menes. He built a new capital city called Memphis. Much of the history of Egypt is divided into three kingdom periods. After all, it's a very long timeline wherein this civilization existed. The three kingdom periods were Old, Middle, and New, with shorter intermediate periods separating the kingdoms. The term intermediate here refers to the fact that during these times, Egypt was not a unified political power and thus was in between powerful kingdoms. Even before the Old Kingdom period, the foundation of Egyptian civilization was being laid for thousands of years as people living the River Nile increasingly focused on sedentary agriculture, which led further to urbanization and specialized non-agricultural economic activity. A small timeline of the ancient civilization is given. Please go through it. To cover all the details about this timeline is not possible in one video. So we will see some basic things about this civilization and how their life was. One of the very common terms associated with this civilization is pharaohs. Who were pharaohs? Pharaohs were the king or queen of Egypt. Most pharaohs were men, but some well-known pharaohs such as Nefertiti and Cleopatra were women. A pharaoh was the most important and powerful person in the kingdom. He was the head of the government and high priest of every temple. The people of Egypt considered the pharaoh to be a half man, half god. The pharaoh owned all of the Egypt. The pyramids are the stone tombs of Egypt's kings, the pharaohs, and one of the world's greatest historical mysteries. I'm sure everybody have seen the pic of a pyramid. They have stood for thousands of years, filled with many hidden secrets, clues about what life and death was like in ancient Egypt. But why did these people build pyramids? The Egyptians believed that if the pharaoh's body could be mummified after death, the pharaoh would live forever. The tombs were designed to protect the buried pharaoh's body and his belongings. What were the Egyptian mummies? It was very important to ancient Egyptian religious belief that the human body was preserved. A method of artificial preservation called mummification was developed by the ancient Egyptians. They believed that when they died, they would make a journey to another world where they would lead a new life. They would need all the things they had used when they were alive, so their families would put those things in their graves. Let us see in short as to how the mummies were made. It took a very long time from start to finish. It took about 70 days to make one mummy. The priest in charge would wear the mask of a jackal representing the god Anubis. The body was washed and purified, organs were removed, only the heart remained. Then the body was filled with stuffing. After that, the body was dried by covering it with a substance called natron, that's basically a salt. This substance would absorb all the moisture from the body. After 40 to 50 days, the stuffing was removed and replaced with linen or sawdust. The body was wrapped in strands of linen and covered in a sheet called a shroud. The body was placed in a stone coffin called a sarcophagus. The mummy was now ready for its journey to the afterlife. When they believed so much into after gods, let us see how were the ancient Egyptian gods. There were over 2000 names of gods in ancient Egypt. Some images of these gods and goddesses show them with a human body and the head of a bird or an animal. Amongst these, Ra, the god of the sun, was the most important god. He was the lord of all the gods. He was usually shown in human form with a falcon head crowned with a sun disk encircled by a sacred cobra. How do we know so much about the Egyptian civilization? One of the very important findings was the Rosetta Stone. It was one of the keys to unlocking the secret of ancient Egyptian writing. It was created in 196 BC. It was named after the town where it was discovered, the Rosetta town on the Mediterranean coast of Egypt. This stone is thought to have been written by a group of priests in Egypt to honor the Egyptian pharaoh. It lists all of the good things that the pharaoh has done for the priest and the people of Egypt. This stone was founded in 1799. The Rosetta Stone was founded by French soldiers who were rebuilding a fort at Rosetta, a harbor on the Mediterranean coast in Egypt. It took 20 years for the scholars to decode the slab. How are the Egyptian writings? The Egyptians did not write vowels and did not use any punctuation. The Egyptian writing, called Heiroglyphs, used pictures to represent different objects, actions, sound or ideas. There were more than 700 hieroglyphs. It is made up of two Greek words, hieros meaning holy and glyph meaning writing. So it basically means holy writing. It was written on papyrus reed, which is a water or a marsh plant with tall, straight, hollow stems. The reeds were flattened, dried and stuck together to make pages. Overall, the climate of Egypt was hot, so people over there wear lightweight clothes which kept them cool. Men of the working classes, they wore a loincloth or short kilt and sometimes a type of a shirt. Women wore straight dresses with one or two shoulder straps. The Egyptians wore makeup and jewelry to honor the gods. Both men and women wore blue and green eyeshadow and black eyeliner. How were the houses in Egypt? They were mostly made of brick. The banks of the Nile provided the mud used to make bricks. Most of the houses had 3 rooms and all of the homes had flat roofs. The house of a nobleman had some extra rooms, but the presence of a central room was almost in every house. In just one video, covering all details about the Egyptian civilization is difficult, but we can say that almost at the very beginning of the recorded history, it was a great civilization which produced wonderful art, architecture, engineering, literature, medicine, and so on. We know that many Greeks and Romans who traveled to the land of Egypt, they were awed by the magnificent remains they saw there. Thanks for watching Go Learning.